Day 2, Pennsylvania and West Virginia. So I started my day off at the very southwestern corner of Pennsylvania in a place called Fallingwater, which is also a name of the house that was designed and built in the 30s by the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright for the Kaufman family, the owners of the famous Kaufman department store in Pittsburgh, as their weekend and summer retreat. And the house is called Fallingwater because it actually stands on a waterfall. And the whole idea is that you can see, or at least hear, the water from every room and every balcony and every porch in the house. It is beautifully designed inside and out. It is furnished with stone floors and woodwork and very nice furniture, and it's completely open to daylight. The lights streaming in and coloring everything is just amazing. And then, of course, the sound of the creek and the sound of the waterfall, which is coming from everywhere. And it was just fascinating to see how it was planned and how it was carried out, and the way it was conceived and the ideas behind it. I can't say that I'm a very big connoisseur of architecture, but this was one of the places that I really did want to visit for a while, and it's just so far from New York that it took a long time for it to happen, but I managed in the end. And when you see places like this, which is not your regular cut and paste construction, there is actually so much thought behind every step and every window and the whole layout. It was just amazing. And it was a beautiful fall day with the sun shining and the leaves of every color and the water bubbling, and especially when you walk across the creek and see the house the way it's supposed to be seen, sitting on top of the waterfall, it was just amazing. And then, after a short drive through the beautiful Allegheny Mountains, I got to my next destination of the day, which is an area called Fort Necessity, a bunch of historical sites, and the one that I was specifically looking for is called Jumonville Glen, which is a little known but fascinating piece of American history. So the year is 1754, and George Washington, yes, that George Washington, is 21 years old and lieutenant colonel in the British Army in charge of Fort Necessity, where he is fending off the French push for influence in the area. His Indian scouts alert him to a group of French soldiers hiding below these boulders, and George Washington attacks them first. One of the French escapes and walks 60 miles to what is now known as Pittsburgh to alert the main French contingent. Among the dead is the commander of these soldiers, called Joseph de Jumonville, who was a very well-known nobleman in France and very close to the king. About 2 months later, the French come back with a vengeance, and George Washington is forced to surrender Fort Necessity. He signs surrender papers without reading them, and only later he realizes that in the papers he admits to having executed Jumonville, which is not true. Meanwhile, the papers make their way back to France and cause an uproar, and less than 2 years later, this whole episode becomes one of the reasons for starting the 7-Year War between France and England. The war rages across 3 continents and costs the lives of close to 1.5 million people. So here's the lesson, my friends. Never ever sign papers without reading them first. And then again through the mountains of Pennsylvania to my next destination, which was actually in the state of West Virginia. And like an alcoholic that waits until 12 p.m. to have their first drink of the day, I waited until I crossed into West Virginia so I can put on country music blasting, because when you make it that far west, it's sufficient enough to enjoy country music without being ashamed of it. And in West Virginia, I went back to the New River Gorge National Park to hike the trail that I didn't get a chance to do when I was there the year before. So you walk through the beautiful forest, and then you come out to this huge cliff that kind of juts out above it with a beautiful view of the mountains and the river, and of course the gorgeous, amazing New River Gorge Bridge. And I was there at sunset, so the views were truly amazing. And the only reason I left was because it was starting to get dark and I didn't want to hike back when the light wasn't so good. But anyway, that was totally, completely worth it, and I'm very happy I got to be back there. They actually have an ultra marathon there every year in about November, and it's 100 miles along the gorge and along the mountains. So maybe in the next lifetime, but it did sound very, very enticing. So that was day 2 of my trip.